Hello, welcome to Unbelievable with me, your host, Andy Kine. It's our end of term special, our final schools debate of the year. We're here at a school in Aylesbury, and what a way to go out with a bang, not a whimper. I've been joined by two absolutely fantastic individuals. To my left, we have John Richards, who is the president of Atheism UK. And to my right, we have Glen Scrivener of Speak Life and one of the foremost exponents of the Christian message in 2025. And today we're discussing a very interesting topic. Some of you will have read Tom Holland's work over the last few years. We're asking the question, does Christianity give the West its foundations? So are the moral foundations of the West, for instance, accountable for Christianity, by Christianity, or are there other reasons? So that's what we're looking at. And Glen, we'll start with you. Obviously, you wrote a book a few years ago now called The Air We Breathe, but we'll let you lead off. Do you want to give us an indication of, first of all, whether you think the Western world has Christianity to thank for its foundations? And if so, why, please?
Okay, so I am Glen. I'm married to Emma. We have two children. We live on the south coast of England. So even though I'm from Australia, my wife's from Northern Ireland, we live in England, which she thinks is halfway. And I let her think that, which is the secret of a good marriage. But I remember flying back into Sydney from the UK. One of the things that really strikes me every time I go back to Australia is how sweetly the air smells. Because you've got all the gum trees. So the eucalyptus is sort of mentholating the breeze the entire time. It's like a cough syrup is the environment, the atmosphere that you're breathing in the whole time. And even though I grew up in Australia, I never noticed how Australia smelt. I had to leave that atmosphere and then come back into that atmosphere and then figure out what that atmosphere was. And I think the same can be said about moral intuitions, about our gut instincts, about the values that we prize, about the icons that we look to in our lives. We value things, and that is sort of the moral atmosphere that we live by. But most of the time, we take it for granted. Most of the time, we're not really paying attention to the values that we have. Things like compassion. I think probably everybody in this room would believe that a society should be judged by the way it treats its weakest member. Right? That's a lovely thing to think. And if you tweet that out, you get a lot of reshares, a lot of retweets on that kind of sentiment. Or if you say, I think every single human being is the moral equal of every other human being, no matter whether they're black, white, gay, straight, man, woman, rich, poor, doesn't matter. We're all equal. I think we all tend to take these sorts of values, these sorts of virtues for granted. And what I do in the book, The Air We Breathe, is just kind of take us out of our current atmosphere and we breathe deep from the atmosphere of the Greeks and the Romans around about the year 0. And I imagine what it would be like to be, let's say, the centurion at the foot of the cross. And you think you're doing a glorious work because you are squashing this rebel called Jesus, and you are enforcing this glorious vision of the peace of Rome, and you're doing it at the point of the sword. You don't believe in equality. You don't believe in compassion at all. You believe it's right to put this rebel Jesus to death. And yet 2,000 years later, we look back to the cross, and not only is the cross a religious symbol for us, it is a symbol of the exact opposite of what the Romans thought that it was. The Romans saw it as a symbol of dominance and of cruelty to those who would threaten the peace of Rome. But nowadays, we have crucifixes everywhere. And in fact, there's one above us, and it takes on a very different nature to us after 2,000 years of Christianization. And I guess my thesis is just whether you've ever set foot inside a church or not, whether you've ever opened the Bible or not, I think your moral sensibilities have been shaped by that man on the cross, and they've been shaping you more than you might imagine, so much so that you now think it's obvious, it's natural, it's universal to believe in things like equality and compassion. I think if you trace those ideas back, you find Jesus at the other end of it.
Brilliant. Thanks, Glen. John, we'll turn to you now. Great to have you on the show. It's been a long time since we had you on unbelievable.
Yes, it has.
Yeah. So Glenn, they're talking about how essentially our moral values and virtues in the Western world in the current epoch, very much standing on the bones of 2,000 years of Christian teaching and Christian morality. I wonder, as the president of Atheism UK, where you may agree, where you may disagree.
Okay. Well, you have phones these days, don't you? You can use YouTube, can't you? You've seen animals being compassionate, haven't you? You've even seen animals being compassionate across species. Have you seen that video of the swans feeding the fish? We are not exclusive. We are not weird. We are just part of the animal kingdom. And because we're social animals, compassion is necessary. Nothing to do with any religion whatsoever. Because we are mammals who are born helpless, our parents need to nurture us. That's the origin of compassion. That's the origin of empathy, which we extend to our wider family, our tribe, and the whole of humanity. Jesus wasn't necessary. It wasn't the case of man was barbaric and then suddenly Jesus came along and everything was sweet and light. That is ridiculous. So the other thing that Glenn said was that our civilization goes back to the ancient Greeks. He's right, in a sense, because it started with Socrates and Aristotle and all of those guys. Do you know when they lived? 300 years before Jesus. So I'm afraid the claim that we owe our civilized society to Christianity is untrue.
Shots fired, shots fired. Glenn, come on then. You and me, baby, ain't nothing but mammals.
Yes, that's dating us both.
Yeah.
Andy. Back from the 1900s, kids. That was a song from the 1900s, the Bloodhound Gang.
The Bloodhound Gang. I can't say the next line.
Yeah, quite right too. Although I do quote it in the book.
Right.
You have to buy it to find out where. But I think on the subject of compassion, it's interesting that there was a common saying in Rome that begins in a way that all of us can assent to and ends in a way that makes us all uncomfortable. This common saying was, every day find an opportunity to help your friends and to harm your enemies. So this is a very common saying. In fact, it's been found in epitaphs to various people who have died. And it seemed to be the sort of common wisdom that people would have. And I imagine that all of you nodded along to the first half of it. Every day find an opportunity to help your friends. And we all say, yay and amen. But then when this very common Roman saying said, harm your enemies, you probably thought, ooh, I'm not so sure about that. And I want to suggest to you that all the cultures of the world believe in the first half of that saying, and most of them believe in the second half of that saying. And the fact that we recoil from it, that sense of ew, I think was given to us by Jesus. The idea that compassion is helpful across species, Richard Dawkins talks about it in The Selfish Gene as a biological misfiring. But actually, for your genes to survive, yes, you might have kin selection in which you are kind to those who share your genes. There are some evolutionary theorists that believe in group selection, which is a far wider circle that you can extend in terms of the compassion that you are to share. And if we all survive, then we can outcompete the other guy. But the idea that your compassion should extend beyond your kin, beyond your group, beyond your nation, to the other tribe, to the other nation, to your enemy, That was an idea that was so extraordinary that when Jesus taught it in Luke chapter 10, everybody's heads are spinning. That's where Jesus talks about the Good Samaritan, where the hero of that story is a person who is from a different religion, who is from a different nationality. And Jesus, I think, gives us even our instinct that members of other societies, members of other cultures can show all kinds of compassion and all kinds of virtues that put believers in the Bible to shame. That is 100% true. But Jesus' idea of extending the circle of compassion, not just to your kin, not just to your group, but even to your enemy, I think that is the kind of instinct that we tend to share now in the West, whether we are Christian or not. And it's the sort of thing that I think is unique to this particular strand of Christian civilization.
Brilliant. John, over to you.
Right. So which particular strand of Christianity are we talking about here? There's 30,000 different denominations. They disagree with each other. The Mormons they only sprang up a century or so ago, led by ex-convict Joseph Smith. And the Jehovah's Witnesses deny their sick children blood transfusions when they're indicated. There isn't one Christianity. I know that Glen is an
ordained minister in the Church of England.
Right. Okay. Thank you. I thought you were an evangelist, Glen. My
An
apologies.
evangelist. Yep.
You are an
Not
evangelist.
ordained. Yep.
Okay.
I'm a cricketer as well. But yeah.
Yep. Me too. In years gone by.
Very good.
Yes. So the thing is that what has happened is religion has divided humanity into lots of little different sects, and they all disagree. One of my friends, former friends, I've got to say now because he disowns me, is an evangelical pastor, and he belongs to the New Reformed Biblical Evangelists, which is a small subsect of evangelism as a larger movement, which started in the southern states with the Baptists. But he has profound disagreements with any other slightly different evangelists. What has happened is religions have fossilized tribalism. It's given us a reason to hate each other, because if you don't belong, you're not righteous. You're not going to go to heaven. You're not privileged. You're not chosen. What do you think of that?
Well, lots of things, if you don't mind me saying, John. But we'll let Glen be the mouthpiece for the response.
Well, I'm not sure how. It is a good question to ask. Which Christianity are we talking about? You can dice up Christian denominations a lot of different ways. You could maybe call them 30,000 different denominations. Really, those fall into three different streams in terms of Orthodox, Catholic, and Protestant. It's interesting, John, that you were in on the ground floor of Atheism UK, which has a history since 2008, I believe. And because you didn't think the British Humanist Association and the National Secular Society were coming up with the goods. And so this is not a Christian issue, is it? The idea that you want to associate with those whose interests more closely align with you, that's not really a Christian issue, that kind of fracture. I think that is a human issue. But one of the remarkable things, I think, about all 30,000 of those denominations, and I don't think the Mormons or the Jehovah's Witnesses actually would qualify it in that particular set of denominations, but all of those 30,000 subscribe to the same creeds, subscribe to the Apostles' Creed, the Nicene Creed, which is an extraordinary level of actual unity across incredible diversity across the face of the planet. And I think Christianity is the most diverse sociological phenomenon that the world has ever seen, getting into all kinds of areas of life where actually there are some religions and there are some pockets of atheism where it is very geographically predictable where you would find, for instance, Hindus. It's very geographically predictable that you would find Hindus in India and in the diaspora from India. I think it's also quite geographically predictable where you would find a member of Atheism UK, right? Or a member of,
In the UK.
in the UK, that's true.
1 point for John.
Yeah, that's true. But in terms of the kind of atheism that I would say you subscribe to, I would say that it is more geographically located, certainly, than Christianity, which is actually, I think the big headline story for Christianity is its unity across so many differences.
Well, what about Patriarch Kirill, Glenn? He supports Putin's invasion of Ukraine. Do you?
I absolutely do not. And I think he is condemned by the Christian tradition that largely has grown up in the Western Church. Obviously, he's a member of the Eastern Church, but it was Augustine that has given us our sense of just war theory. For Aristotle, for instance, I don't think Aristotle would condemn Putin for invading Ukraine. I think under Aristotle's definition of just war, Putin can do what he likes. He is enlarging his empire, and fair play to him would be, I think, a thoroughly Aristotelian position on that. It's the Western tradition through Augustine and then Aquinas and on into especially Protestant conceptions of just war now that give us the very moral sensibilities by which we can condemn a Putin. And so I think you might find that we agree on this, but I think we agree on this for some profoundly Christian reasons.
Nonsense. Western liberal democracy has developed despite opposition from Christians. Rationalism, scientific method, has had to fight against doctrine. The fight has sometimes been brutal. Giordano Bruno was burned alive for describing the solar system.
That's not why he was burned alive. I don't agree with him being burned alive, but that is historically false. It was because of his theology.
Well, there you go. It's because he didn't agree with the Pope. Galileo was imprisoned in his house. Darwinism still has to combat creationists. Unity? I don't think so.
So why is the origins of the modern scientific method, for instance, or why are the origins of liberal democracies so very predictable in where they've come from? Why do they have a Western European pedigree to them? And one of the reasons why I'm a Christian is that I think that has been a move of the Spirit and not a move of the flesh. The Bible has a big doctrine about, the flesh is our natural capabilities and powers. And very much the Bible is saying to us that we are not to forward our ends by the flesh, but by the Spirit, by the gift of God that is undeserved. One of my fears about not having a spiritual understanding about the development of such things is that we start to privilege a whole bunch of old white men who have come up with things like the modern scientific method and liberal democracy. Whereas I think the spiritual understanding is it wasn't because of the ethnicity, it wasn't because of anything in the flesh of these people that they came to such an understanding, but it was a very particular worldview, it was a very particular theological understanding of the heavens and the earth, of humanity, of society, and how these things should run. That's why we get liberal democracy coming in Christian countries. That's why we get the scientific method that has been developed. The modern scientific method was developed by Christian natural philosophers at Christian universities for Christian reasons, operating according to Christian presuppositions. I think these points are proving my point for me.
There's a couple of points there. And first of all revolutionary ideas must have a geographical origin. And if you look at the history of religions, you'll find they all started somewhere, and then they spread out like a bacterial colony on a culture plate and infected everywhere else if they could. And it depended on who's got the best story. And Christianity has a great narrative and is linked to the calendar. We're all embedded in the events which were stolen from previous cultures. Christmas, Easter, Michaelmas, they're all pinched from barbarous societies that preceded Christianity. But Glenn has quoted the Bible. So I take it he thinks that the Bible is a reliable source of information. Is that so, Glenn?
When read according to the same standards that you'd read any document. If I'm reading history, I'm understanding it to be history. If I'm reading poetry, I'm understanding it to be poetry, etc., etc.
Have you read the Bible? It's full of contradictions. It's full of fantasy. It's full of utterly preposterous notions, like resurrection, virgin birth. I mean, that's not a reliable source of information.
Presumably, though, John, resurrection is ridiculous if there is no God. If the Christian story is true, then resurrection doesn't seem that hard for God.
Well, there you are. This is a circular argument, isn't it? You're saying God exists, therefore God must exist.
It's just, I think it's just taking the Christian story on its own merits. So the Bible is telling you a story in which there is a God, in which the world exists, in which his son, Jesus Christ, came to take on the burdens of this world, to take them down to the death they deserve and rise up again. Within that story, there's nothing at all preposterous. What might be preposterous is you step outside the worldview of the Bible, you assume materialism, and then you look in, and then a virgin birth becomes preposterous. But, you know, I happen to believe that Jesus is born of the Virgin Mary. But I think, you know, without Christianity, if we're looking from a materialist frame, I think you have to believe in the virgin birth of the cosmos. You know, the universe coming into existence from nowhere. That is a miracle, orders of magnitude more improbable than anything that the Bible has ever dreamt of saying.
So pick your miracle.
Pick your miracle.
I wouldn't claim that we know how the universe came into being, or even that it did. I think that is a mystery yet to be cracked. But what Glenn has just told you is that he thinks narrative is more important than evidence. He's described wishful thinkianity.
Well,
You're having a good time today, John. I can tell you're having a very nice time.
thank you. It's a day out in Aylesbury. So, I mean, evidence is always assessed according to a narrative. Like evidence is always interpreted, and it's got to be interpreted according to a theory. Now, maybe that evidence disproves the theory, but all of science, I'm not even talking about in a religious frame at this point. All of science kind of proceeds on the basis of, I've got a hypothesis, but I don't know about this story yet. I am going to have a look at evidence. And because Christians were in charge of the modern scientific method, they knew, because of our sinful proclivities towards lying and cheating, that we always need to disprove our hypothesis. And so I don't mind evidence. I like evidence. And I like the idea of trying to disprove the hypothesis. But the idea that we can just have evidence and not have a narrative is bonkers. Like of course we navigate the world according to a larger story. You have today, I have today, and I'm glad that you say that the Christian story is such a compelling one, because I think it's the greatest story ever told.
Henri Becquerel discovered radiation. He discovered it because he put a piece of a rock, which turned out to contain some uranium, in a drawer in which there was also some photographic plates. Sometime later, he developed those photographic plates and found the image of the rock in a darkened drawer. There was no narrative. It was an observation. It was a puzzle. It was a piece of evidence.
Piece of evidence for what?
Well, that's what you have to find out when
Yeah.
you're doing science.
Yes, but until you plug it into a narrative,
when you are making observations, you have to accept those are observations. I mean, take quantum physics, for example. At the moment, that's really crazy. And what has to be, what you might wish to add a story to it in order to make it memorable or understandable to our feeble human brains. But there is no story in the universe. It's just a puzzle for us to try to understand. Think of us as...
no, but a puzzle has a solution. You're saying it's a puzzle with no solution.
No, I'm not saying it's a puzzle with no solution. I'm saying it's a puzzle that we haven't solved yet.
Okay, so that's great faith. Okay, so that's great faith that the scientific enterprise is heading in a direction towards, who knows, some grand unified theory of everything, or it is heading towards meaning. It is heading towards truth. It is heading towards a coherent account of this world. That is a statement of faith. It's also a statement of faith to believe that we, little Homo sapiens, have the ability to puzzle out the mysteries of the cosmos. Why should this 3 pounds of grey matter have any purchase on the mysteries of the universe? And yet, we're all living in this world, and we're all the kinds of creatures that can do science, and who want to do science, and who figure out that actually piecing together these pieces of evidence will lead to puzzling out a solution, because there is an end in mind. All these things are a profoundly Christian view of the world. And so no wonder science came into being in Christian societies for Christian reasons.
You're having a nice time as well, aren't you?
You're all having a good day out.
I think we're all having a lovely day out in Aylesbury. Over to you, John.
It's hubristic to claim that Christianity is responsible for science. Yes, some early scientists were Christians because everybody was, and you got punished if you weren't.
So you're just talking about the West there?
Yes, I think we are discussing Western foundations of Western democracy.
That's exactly what we're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And therefore, it has emerged in a specific geography.
Which, I said earlier that all ideas start somewhere.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm not denying that. And I'm not denying that Christianity has had an effect on Western democracy. Our very language is peppered with Christianity. If I sneeze, you say, bless you. Do you know why you say that? It's because people thought that the sneeze ejected the soul from the body. And the saying, bless you, enabled it to go back in. How silly was that? But I'm not claiming that we have the solutions, or that we even can have the solutions. We may never solve the mystery of the origin of the universe, but we have a good way of looking for it, and it's not in the Bible.
And yet it was people who were founded on the Bible who did invent the modern scientific method for Christian reasons, because you've got to believe a number of different things in order to get science off the ground. I know this wasn't the topic of but science has utterly pervaded the West, and I think science is the reason why people nowadays will say, "Oh, I'm not a believer. I'm more of a scientist," aren't they? That's the sort of language that people use in the West, and so it is related to the topic of today that. It is because of a very Christian thing, I would say, science, that we now think we no longer need Christianity. So, but what do you need in order to get science off the ground? You need to believe that there is an order above. You need to believe that there's a world out there that can be investigated. And you need to believe in minds in here that have some correlation to and purchase upon the order up above, and some ability to triangulate and bring the evidence out there into relationship with the order up above. And it's this ongoing triangulation that kind of happens. You need to believe that about the world, about order. Laws of nature is another kind of phrase that we use as a commonplace. Why should there be laws of nature if there is no lawgiver? So science got off the ground for some profoundly Christian reasons, and I think we undercut science if we don't think that there is some solution to the puzzle. Why should you keep on doing your GCSEs and do physics? And John was a science teacher. Why should you keep on at this scientific enterprise if it's actually a puzzle with no solution? If all we have is facts, data, evidence, and no greater narrative, no greater meaning at the end of all things. So I think actually at the end of the day, atheism is undercutting and will undercut science.
Why should we continue with the scientific enterprise? That's a very easy question to answer. I'd be dead if it wasn't for science. I've had open heart surgery, and I'm alive thanks to an artificial heart valve. There's several people, probably in this room, who are alive thanks to injections of insulin, a scientific discovery to combat diabetes. There's a semi-autonomous helicopter on Mars. Do you need any more reasons why we should continue with science?
Why should our human intellect and technology be guided towards? So it could be guided towards all sorts of things. It could be guided towards simply to the military, couldn't it? But you've given an example, for instance, of open heart surgery. So it was Christians that invented hospitals the way we think of hospitals today. It's Christians who invented hospices the way we think of hospices today. It's Christians who invented charity in the way that we think of charity today. And so the impulse to use intelligence and science and technology towards such compassionate ends, I don't think that's a given. Our cleverness is wonderful, and all sorts of people can be clever, but we are using that science in order to attain some ends that are not given to us by science itself. So where do we get those values from?
So we're not automatically doing things to harm our enemies, to quote what you were saying.
Well, we are at the same time. We're all sorts of military weaponry, and we're supercharging that, and we're in an arms race with AI, and we are also feeding that side of ourselves. But why aren't we only doing why aren't we just harming our enemies in that way?
Yeah. Well, because of what I said earlier, we're animals, we have empathy, we have compassion. It's natural. That's what happens when evolution produces a helpless baby. It needs to be looked after. So evolution needs to evolve compassion as well. And as for, what did you say? There's a great power up above.
Order above, or
whatever. Why isn't that great power up above doing these good things? Why did it give me a defective heart? Why does it make children be born with a cleft lip that requires surgery to correct, scientific surgery? What sort of a God, a benevolent God, would do that? One of the favorite Stephen Fry sayings I've got is that he was being interviewed, and he said that if he was in the presence of God, the first thing he'd do is ask him the question, God, why? Why have you given power to this tiny creature to bore through a child's eye and blind it? That's not good. But
So we're at the stage now. We're going to take some questions from you guys in just a couple of minutes. We've tapered to the place that most of these debates come to, which is the problem of suffering. And the problem of suffering is a problem for Christianity. For atheism, the problem is that we have a problem with suffering. So I'm just going to get both Glen and John to speak about that, bringing it back to the idea of the foundation, the Christian foundations or not, of our Western world.
can I go first?
John, by all means.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to clear up a misunderstanding. Although it ends in ism, which is the ending for words that have an ideology, atheism starts with the letter A, which is the letter that means without or not that. We don't have an ideology. We're not purveyors of our particular favorite values and principles. We are just free thinkers, free speakers, free opportunity supporters.
But you personally do have an ideology, don't you, John? So may we ask, what is the story that you build on top of these facts that you've discovered about the universe?
Well, I'm a parent 4 times over. And so my ideology, if you like, is the continuation of the human race. The bringing on of offspring and educating, nurturing again, and giving them opportunities to succeed and have the best life they can. Is that a good ideology?
And if the question is why, how do you respond to that?
Why is a rather unusual question. Unlike all the other questions, they all begin with W. Where, what, when. They can all be answered because they have, in the case of where, they have the location that you can point to. In the case of when, they have a time you can point to. In the case of who, you can point to the individual. Why is peculiar because it's a question that doesn't have an area where the answer can be isolated. Why is not just a question, it's an assumption. It's an assumption that there is a reason or meaning behind whatever the proposition is.
Mm-hmm.
That's not true.
It's not true. Okay. So if it's not true, then there is no meaning and there is no why to our lives. And we then must survive and reproduce.
No.
No?
No. There is no universal meaning. There is no meaning from above. Mm-hmm. We all form our own meanings, our own justification, our own reasons. Mine is looking after my kids.
Mm-hmm. I think someone who's known to us both, Alex O'Connor, Cosmic Skeptic, a great YouTube channel to follow if you're not already on the atheist side of things. But I think he might disagree with you there about our ability to generate our own meaning.
We do disagree here,
Yeah. So let's say that I think my greatest meaning is to drop out of school and just play Halo on the PlayStation 24/7, right? People are going to say, it's not on PlayStation, you idiots, son. Yeah. What an Xbox or whatever.
Dating yourself.
I'm dating myself as well now. Okay, but I'm gonna drop out from school. I'm just gonna play video games. And you as a friend, are you going to say, well, that meaning is just as significant as you growing up to become a heart surgeon to save people like John who need heart surgery? At that point, I think it is not the case that person's assumption about what is meaningful is of the same value as somebody else's assumption of what is meaningful.
Yes.
Okay, there is a value up here by which we say, okay, dropping out and playing video games is less meaningful than studying to become a heart surgeon and saving lives. If so, then there is a truth up here. Okay, and this is what I see John trying to get rid of, the truth that is up here, the why that is up here, the meaning that is up here, the value that is up here. And that place is actually occupied by God. When we get rid of God, we lose more than just, a Sunday morning that we get back and we can go to B&Q and do the DIY that we were putting off. When we get rid of God, we get rid of the why, we get rid of the meaning, we get rid of the value. And I think it leads to a quite dystopian future.
Well, John, we'll just give you a minute to respond, and then we're going to open up to questions from the audience.
Sure. So nowhere did I say that all different opinions and attitudes and wishes are equal. Of course, we wish to help a person achieve the best life they can, and wasting all day playing on your Xbox may not be the best advice. But Glen has now veered into the field of value.
That's what the word best implies.
Well, indeed, yes.
Good, better, best. Those are values.
Yes, yeah.
So if you're going to assess somebody and say that that's not best, you are bringing, we're both bringing values in. It's you're doing it tacitly.
Yeah. I'm not contesting that we both bring in values. I'm just saying there's no evidence for any creator deity who dispenses them down onto us from above.
No evidence.
Correct. That's another debate.
It is. There's about 5 other debates we might have off the back of today.
I would ask Tom this, and this is a surprising question maybe, to nominate for me one thing, just one thing, that Christianity has introduced that doesn't have some source, some parallel, some analogy in previous and in other civilizations.
The ideal of lifelong matrimony, I think that's a very distinctive Christian concept. I think the category of what by the 19th century is coming to be categorized as homosexuality and heterosexuality, I think they have no precedence. I think the notion of secularism, the idea of there being religions, I think all these are entirely exclusive to Christian civilization. I think the concept of science as it emerges in the 19th century, I think is entirely exclusive to Christian civilization. I think the idea that human beings are created in the image of God, that is obviously something that Christians share with Jews. It gives a degree of dignity to human beings that no other cultural tradition that I'm aware of even remotely approximates.
Thank you for both speaking so passionately and consistently from your worldviews. We're going to open it up now to questions from the audience. So first question for John. John, at what point in your life did you realise you were an atheist, and what encouraged that decision? What brought about that decision?
That's a good question. Thank you very much for that. You're not going to like this, but we are all born atheists. Let me tell you why. It's because religions have a body of knowledge, a narrative, a scripture that has to be taught. And when we were born, we had no language. We learned to speak by about the age of 1. So no word-based information can be exchanged to us until after we're 1. And then we pick up whatever is going on in the culture around us, whether it is our family, our school, our society, our church. So I, luckily, never got indoctrinated. And I stayed the atheist that I was born.
The feel-good story of the year, John.
Can I be provocative and say I think that is quite a Christian response, in that I think a lot of, like, I don't think it would make sense to a Hindu in the 12th century to be told that their religion consists in a body of doctrine to be taught to them. I don't think it would make sense to a Jew to say that their religion consists in a set of creedal propositions that need to be taught to them. A male Jew is circumcised from the 8th day and is a member of that religion. So your understanding of what atheism is a kind of, it's not just Protestant, it's a certain kind of Protestantism that sort of decided against infant baptism and went in a certain hyper-Protestant direction. But it's a very culturally contingent, located Christian view of what a religion is that you're just saying. But you're saying it as an atheist. And I think that's yet more evidence that you and all of us have been far more Christianized than we imagined.
Is that to do with the opt-in nature of Christianity?
Right. Yes. So I think a more Anabaptist idea is that you wait until you understand the body of doctrine, and you opt in. And I do think modern kind of Western atheism is a kind of a hyper-Protestantism that gets rid of all kinds of things, including sacraments, including God. And what you're left with is a vision of religion that is actually not recognized by the majority of religions around the world.
So what Glen has been telling us is that some religions, perhaps even some branches of Christianity, feel it necessary to brand their baby boys by bodily mutilating them so that they know who they are and what they belong to from birth. Isn't that despicable?
It is the very nature of humans to belong to families and to grow up from within families.
Not bodily mutilation. I have left my children alone. Thank you very much.
Well, I think that's a pretty appalling view of Judaism to say that they're involved in bodily mutilation.
It's true.
Okay.
Let's have another question. Great question for you, Glen. Would you not agree that Christianity is merely a tool for good behaviour?
It's a very good question. And I can see why that question gets asked, because if I say that sort of a lot of modern values have come from Christianity, you might think that the point of Christianity is to give us values. And I don't think that is the point of Christianity. I think that these values are the morals to a story. We've been talking about story throughout. The heart of Christianity is the story of God the Son, Jesus Christ, became God our brother at Christmas. He died on the cross to take all the ways that we fail at these values. And I fail at them every day. Everybody in this room fails at them every day. Jesus took on himself the death that deserves, rose up again, and gave us his Spirit so that we can be children of the same Heavenly Father and pass on the love of God to others. That's the story that a Christian inhabits. And then kind of Jesus said that it's a tree that produces fruit. And good behavior is like the fruit of that tree. And as I live into that story, as I experience more of the love of God, then I'm more able to pass on that love to others. And others might then point at me and say, oh, Glenn, you're displaying the virtue of compassion at this point. And I'll say, oh, am I? I just thought I was receiving God's love and passing it on. So actually the morality that I speak about quite a lot in the book is not the point of Christianity. It's actually the fruit of the story. And the story is of Jesus Christ, his coming, his dying, his rising again. That's the heart of Christianity.
I can see John's ready to speak once again.
Did anyone count the number of times Glenn said story in that little speech?
Yeah. Story doesn't mean untruth.
Did any of you notice him say evidence once?
Here we are. Here's the evidence. This story has actually birthed the most disruptive, the most inclusive, the most enduring sociological phenomenon the world has ever seen. The greatest revolution that this world has ever seen. So I believe that God has left footprints on this world in the 1st century, and that actually people walking in his way have left a heck of a lot of footprints on this world.
Okay, so what he's now doing is mixing up vox populis fallacy with vox antiquitatum. Sorry, not vox, but the fallacy of antiquitatum, tradition. He's saying, because a lot of people believe this stuff, and because it's gone on for a long time, many generations, it must be true. No, it mustn't. A lot of people believed the earth was flat. A lot of people believed the sun went round the earth. A lot of people believe iron ships would sink. All wrong.
It's very hyper-Protestant of you to throw the past out like that.
This is great. Let's have another question. Lovely question coming in now for you, John. You've sort of distinguished between evidence and story and science. Yeah. But the question they're asking, surely science gives us a story when it looks into the past and analyzes the past. That gives us a story of the past.
There are some branches of science like geology and paleontology that are devoted to analyzing the past. Yes, of course. And you can have a history of science. It's all about the past. But what science does that religion doesn't is work at the cutting edge of now and look at the future.
For which Christians give great thanks. We have given the world science, and we're very glad that the world is getting on with it.
That's a claim.
Oh, it's a historical claim. So the historical evidence for the origins of the modern scientific method being from Christian natural philosophers at Christian universities for Christian reasons, that evidence is there in the history books. You can be a history denier at that point on, but the evidence is in. It was a Christian contribution that was at the grassroots of modern science as we understand it.
And Darwin's father was a Christian too. But history also reveals social attitudes. And at that time, 150 years ago, when science was beginning to gather speed, you couldn't really survive comfortably in a society without signing up to going to church and worshipping his Lord. And even today in America, you can't be, you wouldn't be successful in running for public office, becoming a governor or a senator or a House of Representatives member or a president, if you didn't pretend to be a Christian.
You got to pretend not to be a Christian.
Nobody would vote for you. There's only, do you know how many Americans in the Senate? No, not the Senate, the whole kit and caboodle.
Congress.
Thank you very much. How many of them are atheists, declared atheists at the moment? 1. Is it 2?
No, I thought it was 0.
Oh, you thought it was 0?
He's just passed on.
Yeah, it may be 0. Recently it was 1, although he may have lost his seat in the recent election.
Or may have had an experience of the Lord.
Or may have got
no, do you at this point?
Yes.
We've got time for one more question. Question for you, Glenn.
Take it, Glenn.
What do you? Yeah. Good luck with this one, Glenn. I already can't remember what the question was, so we'll just say, Glenn, what do you think about the fact that people who are not Christians have contributed to such good development?
Especially from the Muslim world, for instance, we might think of algebra. Anyone studying algebra? at the moment, and so was it Al-Jibril? Was he the sort of the founder of modern algebra, and so like brought from the Muslim world, and we thank him, and we thank so many other contributions towards our scientific knowledge. We've also mentioned
They grabbed them, effectively. They grabbed them.
well, there's been some grabbing done in history, that's true. But in pre-Christian history, we've already mentioned Plato, Aristotle, Socrates. That has been preserved into the Western tradition largely through monks kind of scribing out those documents. Christianity has not been against such learning. And in fact, Thomas Aquinas, perhaps one of the greatest theologians, certainly in the Western tradition, his entire kind of Summa Theologica is really a response to a renaissance in Aristotelian theology that was really birthed by interactions with Islam. And so that has been a conversation that has been happening in the West. But I think what has predominated in the West is we have seen Plato, Aristotle, we have seen other influences that have made contributions to the West. We have seen those through some profoundly Christian spectacles, and that those profoundly Christian spectacles they've adjudicated for us. What is it that we take from this civilization? What is it that we take from this culture? Why do we like the first half of that Roman saying, help your friends? Why are we not like the second half of that saying, harm your enemies? So this is not the argument that West is best at all. And I think it's very important that I say that. Let me reiterate. Jesus said to celebrate the Good Samaritan. And the greatest example of compassion in all the Bible is from a person who is not a Christian, a person who is not a person of the book, from a different religion, from a different nationality. And so I think Christians should be absolutely full-throated in naming compassion wherever we see it, naming scientific developments wherever we see them. And that should be a thoroughly Christian thing to do as well.
It's nice to have a fiery one from time to time, isn't it? Thank you to my guests, John Richards, President of Atheism UK, and to Glen Scrivener from Australia. That's all the time we've got for On Unbelievable. Join you next time. Bye-bye.